Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mario Sunshine 100%. It's time to get the blue coins in the hotel. So we're going to go through the missions that have, unique little things to them, like the Manta Storm and cleaning up goop a lot. So yay for that.
Yay.
Whoa, ho, ho. Don't sound too enthusiastic now, guys.
Listen,
We want people to come back.
listen, I'm honestly just impressed that Ryan's able to keep all the blue coins to 1 part per world. Like, that's honestly a decent pace, all things considered. So, I appreciate the hustle and the arguable bustle.
I'm just not super enthusiastic about cleanup in this level in particular, because though I like the hotel as a level concept in general, I'm not super fond of the stuff you actually do in it a lot of the time.
It's also the most dense level in the game by a lot, which means that the tiptoeing takes more time, even though it's less space to cover, if that makes any sense.
It's also the stage with the most amount of unique states in it. So it can be very hard to tell what you have and what you don't have.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true, because you've got the outside, you have... Oh,
Mario died.
There is something particularly brutal about the electrocution animation in this game, I'm gonna say.
anything where you show their skeleton...
Yeah, but-
I mean,
To be fair, like the turkey gobbling noises he makes when he gets shocked, I think, adds some levity to it.
Some levity, yeah, but the rest of the sound design is particularly like, oh, Jesus. It makes me jump every time it happens.
I gotta wonder, how much do you think Flood weighs? Because when it's full, there's gotta be a lot of water in it, right? Like a good...
How many gallons do you think Flood
Look,
holds?
I'm just gonna say, after Super Mario Sunshine is over, Mario's gonna need a real vacation, because his back is gonna be killing him.
I mean, I think that there would have to be like 30 or 40, considering that Flood is an extremely high-pressure washer, right? I don't know how you fit that much water in that tiny little bottle in the back there, but you know what? We won't worry about it.
Well, I mean, you say tiny, but that bottle is almost the size of his torso. Have you ever tried carrying that much water anywhere?
I mean, no, that's the thing I was just about to get at. Like, even if you just filled up a normal-sized backpack with like 2-liter bottles of water until you couldn't fit it anymore, that would probably at least be like 40 pounds. I would think, maybe more.
Ugh.
And I think that Flood would probably hold more than that. So, also, there's the machinery of it as well.
Yes. Ugh.
You know, maybe we shouldn't be so hard on Mario. It would probably be hard to do a backwards long jump with all that crap on him.
So, people have been doing the math, and it turns out, just based on the size of the device, Flood looks like it only carries about 3 gallons of water.
Only 3 gallons, he says.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have some context in as far as how much that weighs, because I've walked to and from Wawa with about that much soda on my person.
I've also done food shopping 1 or 2 times in my life, yes.
Yeah, well, without a car or a vehicle of some kind to put your groceries in, going like over any kind of long distance at any kind of speed with that kind of weight on you, it hurts.
That also depends on how you're carrying it, though, too. Because when I'm doing short-term grocery visits, right, where you don't need the car, you don't need a cart or anything like that, I'm bringing a backpack with me, and I stuff the fucking shit out of that backpack with things that I don't want to necessarily carry with my arms, and everything. I put all the heavy shit on my back.
Right.
Than holding on to my thing, and it's much better and easier that way than just holding it with my hands.
Right, but you're also not running anywhere for any length of time.
Why would I run with groceries?
Exactly. Why would you?
You gotta, clear your name from the framing that Bowser Jr. did, even though after about 2 hours of this, it's extremely clear that Mario did none of it. But you still have to clear your name anyway, because...
What I'm saying is that Mario's not only running around and running upstairs and downstairs and up, down, and all around. He's also doing backflips and side flips and spin jumps.
Yeah, but this is also the same dude. This is the same dude that can fly with a fucking raccoon leaf and like a tail and with a cape. Like his weight has no bearing on his athleticism.
Yeah, he also can only hold his breath for 45 seconds. So you know.
Discounting magical power-up bullshit.
Flood's magical.
No, this is science. All right.
Listen, there is no way, and I fucking it's part 26, and we're getting into the game theory shit. I think there's no way Flood's hovering nozzle can actually function the way it does without magic.
No, because there are real life Flood hover nozzles.
You need a lot more than fucking 3 gallons of water.
Yes. But you can do it.
Not with just 3 gallons, you'll hover for a microsecond.
Maybe Mario moves so fast that this is like moving at 10 times the speed.
Why won't you guys concede defeat?
No, because you're wrong.
You're clearly wrong about this.
Nope. Listen,
see you on Reddit, asshole.
Flood, honestly, is pretty mundane technology compared to the magical paintbrush that can spawn enemies out of it and change the status of the world around it.
Well, I mean,
You know.
the fact that Dr. Egad did invent a magic paintbrush is evidence that magic may have been used at some point in Flood's development, I'm gonna say. But, you know, it's not elaborated on because we don't have a lore menu or lore books that we can find in game. There's no Mario Sunshine Ultimania with extra tidbits of lore. We just kind of have to deal with what we're given at face value here.
I mean, whatever EGAD designs, like, switches between extremely kind of magic feeling and more science feeling a lot of the time. Like, if you take Luigi's Mansion as an example, the Poltergust is framed very Ghostbusters-y science-like, but then there's, like, the portrait thing, which is like, I don't know how you science a ghost into a portrait, man. That seems like magic to me. But you know what? Whatever. I'm not a crazy old scientist who harasses Luigi for a living. You know, that's not my job.
Harasses Luigi for a living. What does he do between the games?
Well, it's not just between the
Harasses
games.
everybody else.
It's not just between the games. If you remember kind of like the beginnings of Luigi's Mansions 2 and 3, Egad's a dick. He's just a dick to Luigi all the time. Like, at the very beginning of Luigi's Mansion 2, Luigi's just minding his own business, and then Egad gives him a Zoom call, and it's like, hey, I need your help right now, and then he sucks him out of his living room and teleports him into Luigi's Mansion 2. Which you can... Oh, man, I just remembered that they re-released Luigi's Mansion 2 on Switch, which is, like, the weirdest port I could ever imagine them doing for a Switch game.
How so?
Off of the 3DS. Because it just seemed kind of unnecessary and like...
Wow. I don't know about unnecessary.
Not necessarily... Unnecessary isn't the right word, but like, there's not that much to gain from it, I guess is the best way to put it. Because Luigi's Mansion already looked really good for 3DS standards. So if you bring it into HD... When they brought it into HD... Like, it looked fine, but it still looked worse than Luigi's Mansion 3 did. Because, obviously, they didn't have the budget for that. So, it's like, when you're thinking about games from the 3DS that you could port to the Switch, right? You can either, A, pick an even more obscure game that maybe didn't have the chance to shine on the 3DS and give it a more mainstream audience. This is your Codename Steams of the world. Not that I would ever expect them to acknowledge Codename Steam, because I'm the only person on the planet who remembers it. But, you know, there's that. Or you could pick a game that, like, could really, really use the refresh. That's your Kid Icarus Uprisings of the world. And please, remaster Kid Icarus Uprising. I'm begging you.
I agree.
Or, like, your Metroid, oh god, Samus Returns of the world. Like, I think that game would benefit from a Metroid Dread Coat of Paint a lot. Just graphically speaking, because I always thought that game looked like fine on the 3DS, but Metroid Dread looks fantastic. So I think
I would enjoy a Samus Returns remaster, yeah, even if it was just like an basic HD upscale of the game.
Yeah. Versus Luigi's Mansion 2, it's just not a game that I see people be excited about in any particular way. I guess is the best way to put it. You know, the first thing I thought when they announced that they were going to remaster Luigi's Mansion 2 is like, why? You know, why this game?
Is it particularly easy to get a hold of?
I would imagine that that Next Level Games still had the files for it, and that they still worked reasonably well in the Luigi's Mansion 3 updated engine. So it was cheap and easy. Is my thought process behind
standards for preservation of game files were a lot better when Dark Moon came around than when Final Fantasy VIII was being made. Ugh.
So here's the thing about Nintendo. They preserve their files extremely well. They have everything that they've ever worked on. It's just we don't have it. Nintendo has it.
Yeah.
They could remaster and re-release any game that they want if they really wanted to. You know, if they wanted to, they've got the source code for Banjo-Kazooie. They've got the source code for Mother 3. They've got probably like even GoldenEye and Perfect Dark and stuff like that, if I had to guess, hidden somewhere in a server someplace in Kyoto. They're just never going to show us.
I know there was a Square game that they were trying to remaster/remake at some point, or just to put a port out. And then someone at Nintendo was like, yeah, we have the source code for that. And they're like, how? So that's why that version of the game is only on Switch.
Is that Live Alive?
No, it's not Live Alive. It's a different game.
That's a game I need to play too, is Live Alive.
Pretty sure Live Alive wasn't backed up, which is probably why they just did a straight HD 2D remake of the goddamn game.
Or is it Live Alive?
It's Live Alive.
Oh, God.
It's Live Alive. It's a pun on the word alive. Or maybe you could say it's Live Alive, but you know.
Live or let live.
Relic from a bygone era when Square was actually experimental.
I mean,
I miss those days.
Okay, hold on. I was gonna play Devil's Advocate, but do you really need to advocate for that devil? Like,
no.
Does Square deserve it?
No,
not really.
I mean, the best they're doing is Final Fantasy these days. You know, I mean, the HD2 remakes are nice, but you know, in terms of
the Dragon Quest III HD2D remake was like the only HD game that like exceeded expectations in 2024. Yeah. Which is, I find very funny, but like, yeah, no, Square really has not been super experimental lately. Like, because Dragon Quest is not an experimental franchise, period. That's just not what it is. Final Fantasy is an experimental franchise, but it just kind of hasn't been doing much these past couple of years.
The two big games are Final Fantasy XIV, which is an excellent MMORPG, but it's essentially just World of Warcraft's formula, you know? It's not exactly something that's going to blow your mind. And then there's Final Fantasy 15. Very good at spectacle and a solid action RPG from everything that I hear, but it's not the same kind of design mentality they had back when they were making games like 10 or 12 or 8 or 9 or any of that. Well, I shouldn't include 9 in this because 9 was a deliberate throwback. But 7, maybe.
16 was experimental, though. As experimental as in a different genre. But
experimental in the sense that they'd been in the action genre since 15 and decided to do it right this goddamn time.
By just making it Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm not against, because I love DMC. But
I mean, Final Fantasy 15 was experimental, but only in the sense that Tetsuya Nomura took so goddamn long jumping from concept to concept that they had to hand it off to a different team to have someone actually fucking finish the goddamn thing.
Would you consider any of the Kingdom Hearts games experimental? Because I haven't only played the first one and even only a couple hours at
from a gameplay perspective, it hasn't had a major gameplay shift since 2.
There are I would say the last time they got experimental was with Birth by Sleep, because that changed the way you approach combat with the command deck, which then Dream Drop Distance continued, but then with 3 they dropped. Because 3 is more 2 than it is Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance.
I would consider that a minor variation on the gameplay rather than like a big experiment, though. because like 2 was a major experiment, and okay, we have this basic gameplay style. How can we really flesh it out? And for the most part, it worked. And they've been going with the Kingdom Hearts 2 basis ever since, although arguably with less mechanically intensive combat.
Yeah, that stems from just different development teams. Apparently, again, I can only go off of what I remember researching about from those videos, and those were years ago. But the team that made KH2, I think afterwards just kind of went everywhere else.
Yeah.
And then a different team developed the other KH games.
I would actually call Final Fantasy VII Remake one of the more experimental games that Square has put out, because they really did do a great job at reimagining ATB as an action RPG combat system. And then they didn't use it for anything else outside of that, so why not? I would have been happy if they went with that for the new Final Fantasy standard, but I guess
for what it's worth, though, I believe in. I've not finished 16 to really say for sure, but I believe 16 is a step in the right direction.
I mean, I don't think that so? Final Fantasy will have a standard combat style ever again, because that's been the thing about the series since its inception, is that every game is pretty radically different. Like, ever since the very first one. Really, the ones that were the most consistent were the SNES games. For my money, Final Fantasy 16 feels like one of those, this is an excellent game, but it feels like it would do better as its own franchise kind of game. I'm really not sure, like...
I think one of 16's problems, again, this is just from an observant viewer, because I watch my friends play chunks of the game. It's not just the combat, obviously, but I think the design mentality was, let's just make single player 14. And I will be the first to say that as much as I love 14, it is a very boring solo adventure.
Didn't they already do that in Final Fantasy 12, though? I mean,
I thought 12 was supposed to be single player 11.
Well, yeah, but
11's an MMO.
So but like, if you play Final Fantasy 12, you'll notice that a lot of conventions from 12 made their way into 14 eventually, including visual ones, and there's a lot of crossover between design elements from 11 and design elements from 14 as well. But like, my point is, I don't know. I don't really feel like Final Fantasy 16 has a very Final Fantasy attitude about it, mechanically or narratively. I feel like on both sides of that, it would have done better as its own thing. Not financially, though, of course, because the Final Fantasy brand moves copies, but you know what I'm getting at.
Not that much, though, with that Sony exclusivity, which is biting them in the
Final
ass.
Fantasy 16 not sell well?
Final Fantasy 16 and Remake and Rebirth. Well, not so much Remake, Rebirth especially. Did not push many units for the PlayStation 5 because of its time exclusivity, because people still don't have PS5s.
Oh, well, it's almost like you need games in order to play the PS. Well, that's the catch-22 is people will buy PS5 without games, and people.
Well, look, I get it. Why they thought that would work, because Final Fantasy VII back in the day was the game that moved PlayStation units. You know, it put the system on the map in a big way. And I guess they thought they could probably do the same thing again, but Final Fantasy just isn't in the same place it was back then. Neither is the spectacle of high technology visuals. So,
Or I would argue console exclusivity does not mean anything.
Yeah.
Now than it did like 10, 15 years ago.
Unless you're Nintendo.
Unless you're Nintendo, yes, good point.
A lot of people also know that the game is going to come out on PC and multi-platform eventually anyway, so they're just like, yeah, I can wait, I'm good.
Yep, and that's what a lot of people ended up doing.
We'll get the blue coins in Noki Bay next time in Super Mario Sunshine.
Right, Mario Sunshine. I forgot we were talking about that.